Hello and welcome to Zeitgeist, where we talk about the psychology of the era, the science of games. I am your host, Dr. Rachel Kowert, and on this episode of Research Review, we're going to take a look at a 2020 article entitled Hostility is Associated with Self-Reported Cognitive and Social Benefits Across Massively Multiplayer Online Role-Playing Games by Smith and colleagues. The article opens by discussing how MMORPGs, or massively multiplayer online games, have historically been linked with patterns of play that are harmful to one's physical and mental health, including elevated anxiety and depressive symptoms, poor coping skills, and increased impulsivity. On the other hand, they also note that what they call hazardous play, which they use analogously with gaming addiction throughout the article, is often associated with difficult social experiences such as loneliness, low self-esteem, and hostile attitudes towards others. Throughout the article, they focus specifically on this link with hostility, noting that in many different samples, hostility has been associated with problematic internet use and hazardous or addicted MMORPG play. The authors argue that these associations may reflect how online spaces offer opportunities to express hostility, but may also indicate how hostile individuals are more likely to play MMORPGs as an escape avoidance strategy. The authors say, quote, "From this perspective, MMORPG play could be operating as a coping mechanism that then promotes gaming activities to the point of addiction." That seemed like a jump. They continue, "Alternatively, MMORPG may offer accessible and practical ways for individuals to compensate for negative real-world challenges. For example, a lack of social stimulation, that while producing some benefits, could also lead to excessive and harmful patterns of play." The author's goal is to provide some information about hostility rates and MMORPG benefits and player choices within games, as they argue that it's critical to understand the importance of trait hostility and hazardous play. To do this, they look at the links between hostility and what they call core player activities in MMORPGs: skilling, killing, and questing. Skilling is discussed as players collecting or using in-game resources to gain competence in non-combat skills, like woodworking. They note that skilling offers settings in which players can congregate and socialize in communities. Killing is engaging in combat with monsters or other players. And questing signifies story-driven content, which can involve combat, puzzles, or exploration. The authors argue that preferences for combat activities will be more strongly linked to hostility than communal activities, like skilling. To evaluate these relationships, they surveyed 5,847 players of RuneScape. RuneScape, really? Via Twitter and RuneScape forums. They measured their role preferences, skillers, killers, or questers, trait anxiety, which they defined as resentment and suspicion of others, and any resultant beneficial outcomes from play with a series of questions such as, quote, "The skills I have gained in MMOs have helped me achieve major things in my life," and, quote, "My online relationships inside MMOs have helped with my offline relationships." Results. Killers reported higher levels of trait hostility than skillers or questers. Respondents with the highest trait hostility scores tended to report the strongest benefits in terms of cognitive skills gained in MMOs, helping them to achieve major things in their lives. Similarly, the most hostile respondents reported the strongest agreement that their online relationships inside MMOs had helped their offline relationships. Although looking at the graphs, you can see that the standard deviations overlap, so this is really a case of significant but not necessarily substantial. The authors also note that, quote, "The most hostile players reported the strongest importance of in-game as compared to offline achievements, which they note possibly indicates hazardous involvement." But they don't actually ever say why. Hostile players also reported the strongest cognitive and social benefits to play, including skills acquired through MMORPGs that have helped them achieve things in their offline lives and their offline relationships. The authors conclude that these findings offer a new perspective on the way that previously reported risk factor for harmful MMORPG play relates to player engagement, by offering a helpful space for hostile individuals to develop problem-solving and social skills, and suggest that some people who might be vulnerable to developing hazardous patterns of MMORPG play may also be experiencing greater tangible benefits. The assumed jump to problematic, addicted, hazardous play is a hard leap for me to follow here. They don't really talk about how hostility is actually linked to addictive play, and they don't go into any of the debates about problematic and addicted play here. If I didn't already know quite a bit about the research in that area, I would assume from the surface level here that the discussion about excessive play is the norm rather than the exception. What is hazardous play? Is it addiction? They never say. It is never defined. To be honest, I don't really understand the point of their study. I'm not trying to be harsh or disrespectful in any way, but I don't really understand why looking at how in-game achievements relates to offline achievements moderated by hostility is interesting or important. I like the idea of talking about how the positives may come with the negatives. So maybe an increase in trait hostility is also associated with the benefits and kind of teasing out those relationships. But regardless, they don't actually talk about why or how. They keep mentioning hazardous play, but the literature doesn't connect to their hypotheses, to their findings, or to any next steps. Again, I do like how they're trying to shed light on potential positive outcome of MMORPG play. They state, quote, "Our findings provide a new slant upon the choices players make within MMORPGs and the benefits that players believe they derive from these choices, including both positive skill transfer to players' offline lives and perhaps more strikingly, positive transfer from online to offline relationships. Critically, our research provides evidence that those vulnerable to patterns of play might damage health and well-being, report the most tangible benefits from these games." But you really have to define what you mean by hazardous play, or this doesn't really make any sense. You have to clearly discuss how knowing its relationship with in-game playstyles is something useful to know. What can we do with that information? If you like this video and want to see more, please like and subscribe. And until next time, be excellent to each other and always cite your sources.